My name is Joe Peroni, and this is the Rise Above Project. And today I want to talk about some experiences and some lessons that I have learned this week on my road trip to Ely, Nevada. And I was working there as a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I was working at a skilled nursing facility. I'm just going to call it that for now. I don't want to say the name of it, just in case I say something that I shouldn't say. So let's leave the name out of it. This was a big deal for me. I live in Las Vegas, Nevada, and it's about a 4.5 hour trip to Ely, Nevada. And it started out like this. About 3 or 4 years ago, we started to do some assessments for some of the residents at this facility. And what I noticed was with the assessments is that it never followed up with any actual therapy sessions, because the thought was probably that they couldn't do much for these types of people in this facility. Most of them were old or very old. A lot of them are, unfortunately, they have situations physically where they're dying. Emotionally, a lot of them have dementia. And I guess it was thought that, this is not the right population for therapy. But I had other ideas. My idea is that all human beings deserve some respect. And I think a lot of these issues that you see with them, such as depression, are because they are in these types of facilities and they get very little human contact. And unfortunately, their families don't visit them very much, and things just kind of get worse from there. So I started doing therapy with some of these clients. And now I have kind of a pretty large caseload of clients from this particular nursing facility, and it's been working out pretty well. Now, this started a few years ago, so everything was online then. And the reason why for this particular place, again, because it's a 4.5 hour trip, and they really don't have good services out in this area. So through this whole time, it's not the pandemic that caused us to do this online. It's just the fact of where Ely, Nevada is. Now, this is an interesting place for somebody like me because I'm from New York. I lived on Long Island, and I worked in New York City, and I'm just used to a lot of people, and now I live in Las Vegas. Ely, Nevada has a population of only 5,000 people. And for somebody like me, it's out in the middle of nowhere. So it was a really difficult mental acrobatics for me to be okay with driving there. I mean, emotionally, I did want to drive there to see the clients, but I am not a big fan of driving out in the middle of nowhere for hours and for miles. But let me get back to doing therapy with clients at this facility. My idea was, and I started to build up this clientele, was that I wanted to give them a safe place to be able to express themselves. Because as much as the workers there are very nice people and they're very caring, they're also understaffed, and they just don't have the time to sit there with each and every client and listen to them and talk about their lives. They just don't have the time to do it. So I thought they needed a safe place to be able to be human and to talk and to be listened to. I also thought developing a social connection would be beneficial to them, and I was trying to facilitate healthy social interactions. Even if it was just me, at least in 1 week they would be able to look forward to having another week. And so it gave them a pseudo type of friend to go along with the therapy. And I also try to give them meaning and purpose if possible. For example, let's say a particular client likes to knit all day long, and that's what she does. But she doesn't have a lot of direction. She's just doing it because out of boredom. Well, what I would do is I would say, I would really like a hat. And let's say somebody would knit me a hat. So now they have a goal of knitting a hat. And of course, I would pay her for her time. And I've done this with a lot of clients, trying to bring out some of the things that they still like to do, but I gave them a reason to do it. So that seemed to be very helpful. Basically, I'm trying to remind them that they're still worthy and they're still human and they're people and they deserve to be seen and heard. Along the way, I've noticed that there has been a decrease in their loneliness, a decrease in their depression, and I've been also able to increase their physical activity. Well, how do I do this? Well, because most of the time they sit in their beds all day long. And of course it gets worse and it gets more and more difficult for them to get out of bed and to walk, and most of them are in wheelchairs. So I encourage them highly to get up and to get out of bed, and I give them a goal. And a lot of times they honestly, they follow through. I've also noticed a decrease in the cognitive decline. And overall, I think it does reduce the risk of them going into dementia. So yes, I believe that there is value in therapy for this type of people, this group of people. But the big thing that I was missing with this, and it's been a few years now, is that I never saw any of these clients in person, and I really wanted to change that. But in order to do that, I had to challenge my own anxiety. So I went through all this stuff. I had the oil changed on my car. I had 4 new tires put on my car about a month ago to get ready for this. I had to drive 4.5 hours, and it doesn't seem that long for some people, because I know some people like road trips. But this is not the same type of road trip that you would take, let's say, from Las Vegas to, say, San Diego or Los Angeles. There's gaps for like 100 miles where there's nothing there. And for me, a city kind of guy or a New York kind of guy, it scares me to death. There were long stretches where there's no cell service whatsoever. And I thought, wow, I kept having this thought that what happens if the car breaks down? How am I going to get out of this? I'm in the middle of nowhere. I don't see anything. And it's just not my style, not my lifestyle whatsoever. So it was really scary. I was also scared to miss a gas station, because if you don't find a gas station, you're screwed, because there's nothing for miles. I looked up everything I could on how to increase your gas mileage. That's how in anxiety I actually was. So I did everything they said. What I did was I put in premium gas. I had my windows rolled up the whole time. I didn't use any air conditioning. And because I was afraid to stop anywhere, because I didn't know if there was going to be any place to stop, I stopped drinking water like 9 o'clock the night before. And so I left at 5 o'clock in the morning to do so. I didn't really have any water either, so I was kind of dehydrating myself along the way. So what did I see out there besides nothing? 18-wheeler trucks. I mean, a lot of them. Scared to death of that too, because it's really weird. When they go past you real quick, the whole car moves over. I'm like, and if I did have to get out to go to the bathroom, there was nothing there. Everybody's like, well, don't worry, you're a man. Just go on the side of the road. I'm like, what, are you kidding me? There's some places, most of them, there's only like 2 or 3 feet of space to the side of the road. So even if I did go there and an 18-wheeler came by, I'm like, that is so close to my body. Like, I am not going to be found dead because I had to go to the bathroom on the side of the road. Like, there's just no way. So I was scared of that too. So I had, it was like, and I know it seems like nothing for somebody, but this is one of the lessons why I'm telling it to you today, is that everybody has anxiety, including me. Just because I'm a therapist doesn't mean that I don't experience anxiety, especially for things that I don't do very often, and I'm afraid of the unknown. So how do you get over that? Well, you just do it, right? You just push through it and you try to look for the good part of it, which I'll tell you that later. Now, the other part that scares me is that I like people, but I'm not really in tune with this whole rural area thing. It's like up 6,000 feet in the mountains. It's, I think the number one activity they like to do there is go hunting. Not my thing. I looked up the percentages on this. They say about 82% of the people are conservative Republican, which scares me. So I looked that up even more. And they said in the last 4 years, there's only been $398 that have been donated to the Democratic Party, which means that like they hate liberals. And I am one. And I just don't understand the culture. So I'm a little bit nervous about that too, going to the type of atmosphere. I can't, the culture just confuses me to death. For example, they identify as individualists, right? They don't like collectivism. The thought of like communism, community, socialism. They put all those words together. All of them have different definitions, but it doesn't matter. They see it all as, they just don't, they're afraid of government. They're afraid of these types of things. Stand strong, be an individual. And I'm like, I don't even understand that version, because individualism, by definition, it means you emphasize freedom of choice. And they don't really agree with that. Individualism has to do with personal success. It has to do with caring about your social status, being progressive, trying to be educated more, caring about gender, race, all religions. They're not any of that. That scares me. Individualists, they care about differences of opinions and attitudes, because again, everybody is an individual. They don't just say, okay, we're all like this. So it scares me a lot. And looking at, just facts, I do know that they have a very high church attendance in rural areas, and this place is included in that. But what's weird about that to me, and again, something else I can't understand, that confuses me, which quite frankly makes me a little bit nervous, is that although they're churchgoers, they have higher rates of teen pregnancy there. They have very high rates of domestic violence there. They have higher rates of alcohol and drug abuse in rural areas. They have less education there. They have less income in rural areas. And the one that really bothers me, because it really comes into play with the work that I do as a licensed marriage and family therapist, is they have extremely high sex offender percentage in rural areas. And this place is no different. And it's interesting that the percentage of sex offenders are so high, because on top of that, that's even with the judges and lawyers looking the other way, which I've seen more times already than I can count. Because if you have a population that's only filled with 5,000 people, you have very few bars and places to hang out. And if you do, and you live there your whole life, everybody tends to know each other. So if some guy is getting accused of some type of sex offender situation, how many lawyers are going to go wanting to take that person down when they were probably drinking buddies or they went to high school together? How many judges are going to want to rule against some guy that they used to play high school football with? And again, not to be too stereotypical, but all the numbers back this up. So all of it scares me. So again, my anxiety through the roof, but man, do I want to see my clients in person. I just think that would be so valuable to them. So here I am. I show up. I'm a stranger in a strange land, you can call it. Or if you ever see My Cousin Vinny, I'm like that guy. So I show up, I got a suit, I got a tie, and I'm just really, I could have done something to fit in, but that's not my style either. I'm gonna be me, that's for sure. But yeah, it was really weird. So I guess the question is, was it worth it? And yeah, here's the answer. It's amazing to see clients in person and what it does for them, because it validated what I thought, is that human beings just want human connection. They don't need these fancy techniques done on them. What they really want is someone to listen to them and to be there and to be a human being with them. Basically, like Carl Rogers would say, right? Give them unconditional positive regard. And that's what I did, and it was so moving. Some of the clients, at first they didn't recognize me because they have never seen me in person. They don't realize probably how short I am. Plus I had a mask on too. But when I took my mask off, the smiles made that whole trip worth it. It was amazing. And then a few of them, after they smiled, they started to cry. And in a sense that made me feel good that I might be valuable to them. But on the other hand, it made me a little sad, because it just shows me again that they get so little human connection from their family. And again, in a population of 5,000, I don't know what types of families would just drop somebody off at a nursing home like this and just kind of leave them in the middle of nowhere. But they just don't get any human connection. And they're still human beings, and they love the human connection. And they cried that I made the trip all the way there. There were so many things that moved me. One of the gentlemen that's one of my clients, he's in a wheelchair. He's 6'8". And of all things, he's from Texas, right? And he wanted to show off his Texas hat for me and everything. And they don't let him stand up. I guess because he falls down a lot. He's very unstable on his feet. And at 6'8", there's not too many of the people there that can actually catch him. I think they're called CNAs. Like I'm sure they're good people, but they don't want that responsibility of trying to catch a 6'8" guy. And it was amazing. Like, he shocked everybody because he stood up out of that wheelchair. He stood up out of that wheelchair and yeah, he hugged me too. And he was just so happy, and he wanted to show me all his things in his room, and he was showing off his cowboy hat, and he had the Dallas Cowboys shirt, and all the things that I'm afraid of about the culture war kind of thing that really make me feel weird about it. Here's this guy from Texas that was a rancher back in the day, and he's like my best friend. So, that's one of the things you can learn, is that you can look at all the stats you want. You can look at all the data, all the empirical evidence, anecdotal evidence, whatever, just look at it all. But it doesn't mean anything when you're eyeball to eyeball with another person that's going to live and die just like you are. There was a lady that was in one of the rooms. I went to go see this one particular person because she was my client. She's dying of cancer. And she was so thrilled that I was there. But there was a lady in her room, because there's two people in her room. And she was kind of like lying down, but not in a position where she looked like she was sleeping comfortably. She was kind of like in a ball. And I didn't want to bother her. I mean, she looked like she was sleeping. And while I was talking to my client, she says to me, she goes, "I enjoy hearing your voice on Thursdays." And it occurred to me because the CNAs, what they do is they take the tablet to my client and they set it there so my client could speak to me. But you could hear me in the room. So this other lady, although she couldn't pick up her head, she looked forward to hearing another human voice. And so I said hello to her when she was there, and she said that my name, I probably shouldn't mention her name, but she said my name is. And I said hello to her, and I looked up on her wall, and there was a picture of Elvis Presley. And I asked her about Elvis Presley, and she said, "Yeah, I always loved Elvis Presley. He's one of my favorites." And we talked about that for a bit. And then I had to go to another client, and she asked me if I could. She asked me if I could hug her before I left. And of course I did. And, I wanted to be a therapist for so long, and you learn all these things about Freud and Carl Jung and family systems therapy and all this stuff, But this is just so different. It's so human, and people, again, I've said it multiple times already today, but people just want to be seen and they want to be heard. And I listen to some of these people that have been basically thrown out like trash, and all of them have something, they all have the same things in common. They all love somebody at that age. They've all had people in their life who have died. Most of them have had kids. Most of them had dogs, animals. They've had dreams. Some of them were able to attain their dreams, some were not. Some didn't know that the end of part of their life would end up being stuck in a room, basically in isolation. And some of them that their brain still works, but their bodies are not really enough to even walk anymore, and sometimes even to get out of bed. Let me finish with this. Almost all of them wanted to take a picture with me. And because we have such great phones these days, we could take pictures. I did that. And the thought was is that they want those pictures. They want to get copies of them, and so they can put them up on their wall near their hospital beds. And it's an honor in one sense, but again, on the other sense, it's like, where's their families? I mean, they have kids, they've got grandkids, all this, they should be there. You know, I shouldn't have that much power as a therapist, but if I do sometimes, that's okay. It's part of what I take on, and I'm glad to do it. So overall, 9.5, about 9 hours of driving, no water, no air conditioning, windows rolled up, and man, I had a headache for 2-3 days afterwards from that, because it was hot too, by the way. But it was a really great experience all the way through. So I hope some of that was valuable to you in some way. I know it probably doesn't have broad appeal, but maybe you can pull something out of that you like. My name is Joe Peroni. This is the Rise Above Project, and hopefully you can subscribe and maybe even tell a friend. I would enjoy that a lot. Thank you very much.